of guests. It sounds like 12 people, but we have two amazing guests from our faculty of Future O, and they share their experiences about all the urgent issues, ideas, innovations around sustainability. And specifically today, we talk about climate. We have all made a couple of experiences in the last couple of months with maybe even different events we've been to in Glasgow or others. This year seems to be also just in the beginning, in the turbulent times, we're getting back into the track, I think, on focusing on climate change. And here with me are Nadine Michalske as well as Ingmar Redzog. Nadine is the CEO and co-founder of Chemometrics in Berlin. And Ingmar is the CEO and founder of We Don't Have Time in Stockholm. They will talk about, give a little intro about their roles, their organizations, what they do. And I think we have a vivid exchange about topics and a couple of key questions. You can participate as well. So we ask everybody, if you like, put your comments in where you see the stream, whether it's on Vimeo, on LinkedIn, or other social media streams. And our team, Mila and everybody in the Future O team is helping us to put the questions up front so that we can interact with you and put these questions to the speakers. So I'm welcoming Mila also from the team and in charge of communications and always helpful here in the wake-up call. Now, one of the things we are excited about before we're just getting started is that we are getting back into running our executive programs this year. And while we are basically on the road to Davos, our first stop will be Aix-en-Provence. And we are especially inviting chief sustainability officers from larger companies across Europe. And if you're interested and you feel that this resonates with you and your position and your passion, then please reach out to the team, especially Keith in the UK, because there seems to be some interest. And after Glasgow, we also want to get our British friends, back to join us where we are. So reach out to our friend Keith at future.io. Now, the exciting part about X is also that Nadine as well as Ingmar will join us. There's speaker, our friend Youssef Nasser from the UN Climate Change Secretariat, somebody from Climate Kick and other startups joining us in April. Now, up to, let's say ladies first, Nadine, you are in Berlin. And you co-founded Chemometrics a couple of years ago and have a tough job in working with corporates, but also maybe a rewarding job because your technology is something really exciting. So why don't you start about maybe giving a short introduction about your role at the organization and what's your company's mission? Good morning, Nadine.
Hello, good morning, everybody. And thank you for inviting me. Yeah, so my role at Chemometrics is the CSO, actually, just to be correct. So the Chief Solution Officer. So we have a solution, and the core of the solution, of course, is a software. And what we do is we offer like carbon calculation software for large companies or mid to large companies, you say. And we do carbon accounting, reporting, and controlling. So it really sounds like coming from the financing world, and it actually is very similar. And yeah, so I think what is maybe interesting to know about us, that we really focus like on mid and large corporates, because we really tackle rather advanced calculation challenges. Yeah, so I mean, you can calculate carbon footprint in many different ways and many different, let's say, quality levels. And especially for large companies, it's difficult to get sometimes the right quality in place. And so this is something we basically focus on. And so, yeah, because this is our background, this is what we're good at. Yeah? So you can go into different directions. So when we started, we just set the mission, we want to automate carbon footprint calculation, because it seems to be so difficult for some companies, and we need to accelerate to act on climate change. And yeah, but then we said, okay, where do we go into? And we found out that our main, let's say, USP as a team is to really solve the rather difficult problems.
Yeah.
And so it came that we focus on mid to large companies and do this more advanced calculations and more high quality results. I mean, depending on what is needed, no?
Yeah. And we're waiting for Ingmar to join back. I think he's maybe jumping in and out of some stream. So when did you start?
2.5 years ago now.
2.5 years ago, okay.
Yeah, and so just before Corona.
Well, that's very rewarding. And you have, so how did you, let's say, really thought about using this tough proposition? Because let's say, we can be a startup with a team of, well, probably started with 2 and now you're a couple of 10. In saying, well, we want to work with big companies and they're 10 times, 100 times larger than you.
I think this is a bit because of our background. So, like my co-founder and I, we were working together with large companies in the past, so we kind of understand how we are functioning. And also my co-founder Max, he was starting his career at Siemens, so he really knows about technology issues in large corporates. He knows how production lines work, etc. So I think we have some understanding, and that is something that you need to bring in. What we also see, like if you talk to large companies, we want that you understand what they are doing. It's not only that you have to bring in what we need in terms of the regulations to fulfill the requirements in terms of calculation, carbon footprint calculation, but you also need to see what kind of data you need to get out. You need to understand the process as well to get a valid result. No, that's the thing. And if you don't understand that, then you might not create the correct results for them. And I think this is something which made it a bit easier for us, to start there. Of course, it's not so easy to get into a contract with a large company. It was astonishing how many large companies contacted us right from the start. So even like the big DAX companies came to us and were at least interested to talk. I think we're kind of investigated the market of the new technologies to see what's coming up there. And and then we kind of got a foot into it. And when you have one, the first guinea pig, and the others want to be second or third and so on, then it's getting easier.
We dig a little bit deeper into this in the course of the program. Now, before I say hi to Ingmar, hello again, we do have also this Menti question. So we like to just have an opening question to all of you when you see the information on the stream. And so what industry are you in? So maybe you can share with us, what's your background? What is your industry you are looking at? And we can see this live, and it's a little bit a first start to get you into this program. Now, that's why we can look at this. Ingmar, welcome. You have arrived, and you're at the right time, at the right place. I'm really happy to meet you. We met at NOAA in Zurich in December, and really had an inspiring conversation. I'm really glad we met. Because we know traveling is not so much on everybody's mind right now, but there was an opportunity that you jumped on a train. Now, you're from Sweden, and I would love to see, and if you can maybe introduce yourself, and what's your role and what's your mission of We Don't Have Time, and hopefully we can get you more members to this exciting activity you do. Ingmar, your stage.
Yes, thanks, Harald. My background is that I used to work in the finance industry, where I was an entrepreneur running a company here in the Nordics, helping financial institutes and entrepreneurs to communicate to investors. So we had clients such as BlackRock, JP Morgan, and those kind of financial players. But I don't do that anymore because when I become a father myself, I started to read about the climate. And I realized that the climate change is not a problem in a distant future. It's a crisis. And most people were not aware about this situation. So I started to read a lot and educate myself about this problem, and I couldn't stop thinking of it. And the tipping point for me when I decided to do something myself in this field was actually when Donald Trump won the US election 5 years ago. It became so clear to me that that our world leaders will not solve this crisis for us. And if they don't do it, who will? So that was the seed of when I came up with this idea to create a digital platform where we gather everyone that are working on solutions and have their voice amplified, and by that try to change the world. So that is what I have been doing for 5 years now.
Great. Also, we will learn a little bit more about this, but as a special question I have for you, because that was so fascinating, you did tell us a little bit about your first encounter with Greta in front of the Swedish Parliament.
Yes, so it had happened so much in those 5 years because I mean, we change is happening very slowly when you look at it close, but if you look at it from distance, the world is very different today compared to 5 years ago. People now are actually aware of the climate crisis. People talk about the climate crisis. People still don't act enough, but at least people are aware of it. And I would say it's very much because of one person on this planet that have changed this, and that's Greta Thunberg. My first encounter with Greta Thunberg was that I was the first person on site for the first day of the school strike. I've been tipped off that it was supposed to be like a climate strike in front of the parliament, so I went there. I was expecting maybe a group of some angry kids with signs shouting, you know, the usual suspect, angry activists.
Yeah.
But it wasn't nothing like that. It was just a lonely girl sitting in front of the parliament, and people, I just stood there taking in the situation. People just walking by, carrying on their business as usual. And this picture was so telling, because it was really how it was. It was everyone don't care about it, and it's just this lonely 15-year-old girl holding up this single sign, very silent, and tell the truth that the emperor are naked. It was a very strong moment. So I after a while, I went to her and started talking to her. And I also had a colleague of mine that had a camera with me because I wanted to cover this story on We Don't Have Time. And everything was in Swedish, and we are an international network. So I asked if she could speak her message in English. And to my very surprise, she did that instantly, translating it to perfect English in one take. And we talked some more. And when I got to my office, I shared about this moment in the morning on social media, and I also encourage everyone to go there. Don't have this girl need to sit there alone. We need to support her. And that post instantly got viral, and people went there, and they were sitting there, and that started a chain reaction that was really hard to predict. But I will also say that, I mean, if it wasn't me, I think maybe some other person had triggered this action. But it was a very different morning, I would say.
Yeah.
And it also shows that when you connect people, I mean, we are very alone. It's too few people that are active working for change in the climate space. No matter if you're a climate youth or if you're a business person. It's too few people. We are really alone here. And it's an incredible power if you connect those working and have them to work together. And that's the strange of the We Don't Have Time network. We're a global network. We have 60,000 members. But those members together, we reach over 80 million on social media every month. So
yeah.
You don't need to be millions in order to influence the whole planet, actually.
I think that's very true. There's a very, very small group of people. You already have this really impressive audience. Congratulations. And luckily, you could share this directly to an audience when you saw Greta. We looked around and we see that in Europe, there's not more than 1,300 of, let's say, corporate leaders who are chief sustainability officer or in a similar position, and in companies which are maybe bigger than about 3,000 employees. So 1,300 people with their teams, let's say, which sometimes is 40, sometimes is a freelancer with 4 hours a month. They are the ones now who have to tackle this, and we hope we can connect with this group, because this is well, if you also compare 1,300 people compared to what 500 somehow a million in Europe, they have to be an activist already to help and move this ship around. Now, I wanted to ask a couple of questions, and also if you have questions in the audience already, we will bring them in after maybe the next segment. So let's talk about, let's say, the current climate, the current business climate, the climate policies, and some of your experiences, maybe where we discuss these. So I know, let's say, Ingmar, you've been very active at COP26. Nadine, you have been in Davos when you started to launch your company, 2020. Maybe Nadine, can you tell us a little bit about your experiences with, let's say, the big policy world in a way, like we all maybe are running around in the snow 2 years ago, but you have also some experience in where policy is now, using the European taxonomy and bringing this to national discussions and the parliamentary work. Can you share a little bit of your experiences here? Where do you see you can play a role, and what's your view on these policy making convenings?
Of course, we deal with that a lot, because this is kind of the frame for our business, and also I think it's so important that this regulation is getting clear and in place, because what I see is like so many people really want to do something about climate change, also in the large companies we are working with, but companies don't act out of an, let's say, public interest, or idealistic way. They want to make money. That's what we're there for. And so to just change something because of the interest of the society is something that individuals might want within these organizations, but this organization doesn't want it. And so we need to make clear what kind of risks and chances there are in the future, and this is what regulation should help with. And I think this is why it's so important to have regulation going on. And so at the moment we are pretty involved in the CSRD directive, this new directive which is being updated or developed, and showing or helping companies, or forcing companies maybe, and at the same time helping them to get a transparency on what they are doing. So I mean, this is the first step. And before it was just like it was applied to a small part of the companies, like with public interest, so mainly on the stock for the stock exchange companies, and now it seems to get applied to all the larger companies, and large seems to be starting at sometimes less than 500 employees even, so there are different criteria. So I think this is good, because what we see is, of course, companies need to be forced to do something, otherwise they will not, or they need to see the chances. Let's come back to that later. So at the moment we're getting forced, but what we see is like, okay, we need to apply it, and so we're doing something, and but as soon as they are looking at their reporting, yeah, when they see the results, then they want to dive deeper, then they want to know. So I think that transparency really helps to change something, because it gives you the big picture. It gives you also some kind of accountability, yeah.
Yeah.
Why it's called carbon accounting, yeah. And that already helps, because as long as you just look away, you will not, you don't have the problem in front of you. But of course, this is just one part, but it's I would say, important first step. And it's good that now more companies need to do it. It's good that it seems to be like stricter. So before it was mainly like, do it in a way that you think is possible for you or sensible for you, and report what you think is relevant. So that was kind of the guideline. And now it's getting much more clear how the report should be, and what you need to report on in which way, etc. I think that is good. So that there's no excuse to not to do something, and also to have some kind of comparability, because this is also lacking at the moment a lot. Yeah. So
yeah.
If you, and that's also the thing, if you report the carbon footprint, for example, people look at the number and then, what does it tell me? It's not like you look at financial numbers and then you have an idea of how much is it, or and with carbon footprint you don't have it yet. So you need kind of ways to compare yourself to see.
Yeah.
And for example, if you're on track with the 1.5 target and stuff like this. So I think reporting is a good first step, but that's for me just the first step, because I think, and that is, I think, even more important, because reporting is not a mean by itself, it's just a mean for something. And it's clear that emissions should go down.
Yeah.
And what I see is, of course, the large companies, they have some kind of, let's say, strategy departments who look at the long-term perspective, and we're getting also forced by the financial industry, which is also interesting to look at climate risks. Yeah, but the mid-sized companies, especially, or a little bit larger ones, where they just look at the next year or second year ahead. And so we don't have this strategic thinking sometimes, and don't really see what kind of risks and chances there are, like risks of, do I have a market in 5 to 10 years? Yeah, or is it not existent anymore? Maybe I can't even market my products, and or maybe there are other markets coming up that I could apply my capabilities on, and don't have that in my mind. Yeah, and so others are taking the markets. Yeah. This kind of thinking is something that I miss, and I think for that
Go ahead. Yeah.
So this some kind of more clarity from the regulation would maybe help. Yeah. So have long-term perspective, so that people can see, okay, there is something coming up. I really need to maybe go into that direction. I think this is something where transparency and reporting helps at the first step, to have a view on what is now, but to have this long-term perspective and to see, okay, what are my chances, what are my risks, so that I start acting. Because at the moment, we can just see it again, the large industry associations always try to reduce the force to change. And in the end, it will not help them, because they have to anyway. Yeah. And the later they start, the higher the risk is.
Yeah. I think what you say is almost describes our audience. We saw just now in this Menti poll that a lot of people are from communication. So that's almost where it starts. It started with CSR, which could have been sometimes it's a sub-function of PR, because this is what people were doing. And it was maybe an extra page in an annual report. But see the, let's say, big bubble here was innovation, because that's, I think, what you describe. I say, all right, first we're communicating, then we are really measuring, and then we see that, we should do something about it. Now we have defined the problem, like, you measure and then you manage, classical marketing Drucker paradigm. So I think this is what's interesting. So different industries and within the corporates saying, okay, here's first we just reported, now the regulations coming down, we need innovation. And we're not even getting started about ESG reporting. So we know that the next 2 years, about 49,000 companies have to start reporting. Right now, it's about 15,000 companies, mostly public companies, have some sort of reporting. And as you know, even though ESG has 10 different flavors right now, this is getting tighter over the next 2 years. And now 49,000 companies, starting with employees such small as 250 employees, have to start a report. And all of a sudden, the bakery chain around the corner might need a chief sustainability officer because the water consumption will prohibit to have a finance of the next shop they want to open up. Now, obviously, we have a finance expert. That was your world, Ingmar. And I think, how do you see it? Is this where, let's say, finance and regulation can finally also be, let's say, a positive? Because, let's say, the finance world is not always seen as a driver for change, and it's sort of sometimes you have inequalities, and the financial market system, you could argue, needs some renovation as well. But is this almost a revolution coming to us because of a couple of laws in the background in the finance department? All of a sudden, my theory is the CFO might be the best friend of the innovation people, because the CFO might say, before I pay in fines or penalties, I might as well give $1 million more to innovation. Say, can you please address this water problem or the climate problem and the emissions in our company? How do you see, is policy an innovation driver and the finance world?
In the finance world, policy has really driven innovation, and have very conservative organization needs to change. But policy could also be a very, very high burden, where all the time goes into paying lawyers and have meetings about details in the regulation, and that we don't really have time for that if we're going to fix the climate crisis. So regulation is good if you have on the broader level, but if you go into the details, I think regulation could be a burden that actually is something that we really don't have time for. One example is the European Union. They have now started to regulate single-use plastic. That's great because we need to stop our use of plastic. It's actually increasing exponential, so we need that. But I mean, the regulation so far is crazy. You're allowed to sell plastic balloons, but you're not allowed to have a plastic stick to the plastic balloon. I mean, come on. That's a detail. We really don't. We need regulation for the broader level. We need a price on carbon. We need to make it profitable to actually have the green solution, and unprofitable to have the bad fossil-based solution. It's a flow of regulation coming to us. I'm a little bit worried that it's too much details into it. It's too much lobby interest influencing it. And we really don't see the big picture here. Many people in the sustainability area is also detail focused. They bringing up like 100 problems. Have you thought of this, and this? Then you do this in a new way. I'm an entrepreneur. I really don't like people bringing up so many problems when we try to change something. We need, I mean, the climate crisis is really simple. 75% is emission from energy. So we should focus on transforming all energy use to be fossil free, and we have the solution for that. We should maybe not focus on the plastic stick, on the plastic balloon. We need to get off plastic, but hey, we need to have if you put a price on all the fossil fuel plastic really, really high, people will come up with alternatives. We really need to make climate be the profitable one. And today it's really strange. We were at the climate meeting in Glasgow, and you have this discussion about rich countries going to pay to poor countries, like 100 billion climate fund, and they are still not agree on who's going to pay and when it's going to be paid, etc. On the same time, we had this climate meeting. My organization, we set up a counter where we counted up how many fossil fuel subsidies governments are giving away to the fossil fuel industry to have them to be the cheaper choice. Right. And in just 1 week, the sum was over 100 billion. 1 week.
Yeah. And you're still counting. What's the number now? You showed it in the beginning.
Actually, I could show you. It's really,
yeah, show us. It's a big number.
The counter is still up. Let me see here if I could just share the screen. Here it is. It's over $1 trillion.
Unbelievable.
And this is according to the IMF. So it's not like according to Greenpeace. It's according to a financial institution with high credibility. On a yearly basis, this sum is over $5 trillion. Trillion is a very hard. You don't really get what it means. It's actually the whole global GDP is 100 trillion per year. So over 5% goes into sponsoring the fossil fuel industry. We don't need to regulate everything in detail. We just need to stop this insane subsidies, and the market will make the rest. It will not be enough. It's so many details, but what we need to do according to science is that we need to halve the emission before 2030. We don't have time to look into the details on how to sub-optimize the last percent of that. We need to take the broader step. We need to take away those subsidies, and we need to put a price on carbon, and we need to funnel the money to those that are doing the action, have the solutions that could halve the emission. After 2030, we need to look into a little bit more the details, and the longer time it goes in order to reach net zero or 2050, we need to really focus on the details. But now, where we are now, we need to focus on the bigger picture, and everything else is just a distraction.
And
I will also say what Daniel was talking about, reporting. Reporting transparency is also super essential, because if no one see what you do, you will not get credit for it. So it's super important that you have transparency. And that is what We Don't Have Time is all about. We are a review platform where people can follow companies, see their action, and when they do something good, they give them credit for it. If they see that they don't do it, they give them discredit for it, and this drives change. But it can't be in the yearly report. It must be something that is happening on a continuous basis. It can't be like you evaluate this just once a year. This needs to work in the same way the stock market works. When I was in the finance industry, I helped a lot of big companies, public traded companies, to communicate. And it was kind of very cool, because when you write the text in the press release, you know that if you write it in a good way, when you send it out, it could actually increase the shareholder value with like 1 billion in just a couple of minutes. And it's all about how you write it.
Story and narrative.
Story and narrative. And here's important. It's easy if you're not good at this to brag that you're better than you are, and you release this press release, and the stock market celebrate it. They buy your share, and you get a lot of compliments internally in the organization. However, if that is not truth behind it, the share price will go down, and the trust will be destroyed for these companies for months or years after that. So when people talk about greenwashing, it means you should not stop communicating. You should communicate in a way where you still have trust, so people will see that you're doing great, but you should not brag about it. You should not make it bigger when it actually is, because that will hurt you in the future. But for the climate and sustainability field, you don't have this accountability. You don't have the stock market. So we need an information stock market for companies. And that is what I'm trying to create.
That's what you're doing. Yeah, exactly. I think everybody should check this out. We don't have time. You also have a fantastic app where, you know, the audience or your community is pushing issues, pushing, you know, news reports about certain companies or issues. And then the community can vote on it. And then after a certain threshold, you actually now then put it on other social media and put some advertising budget behind that opinion. So there is, it almost feels like a stock market, but in a very friendly way and in a very active way, you know, right where you are and where your phone is. But you have so many examples. I wanted to ask the audience now for questions. If you have a question, please type it in where you see the screen stream, and then we, you know, the team will come up and Mila will share the questions. While we wait for this, please type it in right now. You must have really good examples already where maybe a story, maybe similar to the one from Greta, but something like from left field, maybe all of a sudden through your audience could see the lighter, you know, day, and getting some bigger audience, and hopefully, which then educates and brings into action. Do you have an example of some, you know, a business model or new ideas or practical example where you could have this kind of impact?
Yeah, I think the business model aspect is often overlooked when you're trying to change your company, be better for the climate. Many companies in the past that have a CSR department, they have been very focused on limiting the destruction. Like a fast fashion company. I don't need to name anyone. It's great if you try to limit the emission from your fast fashion company. You maybe reduce packaging, you maybe reduce transport, and it's kind of easy to just reduce your emission by 10-20% or something like that. But as long as your business model is all about selling clothes that people use for 3 months and after that throw away, you will never succeed with your sustainability. So what the companies needs to do in order to actually be part of the solution instead of part of the problem is not so much look on optimizing what they do today. It should instead be about how they need to operate tomorrow and how they need to transform their business models. And the companies that are great at this, those are the companies you should invest in. Those are the companies that are actually going to be the winners. So one example here is a really, really big company that I hope will succeed with this. They have the ambition, they have the knowledge, they are struggling with it, they have not yet finished, but they are actually doing what they can. And it's IKEA. Yeah. IKEA is all about selling cheap furniture. So it's a little bit about like the same as fast fashion. You buy something cheap, you use it, and you throw it away. And personally, I never liked that because I like to use furniture that my parents used, and it should last for a lifetime. And IKEA really don't do it.
My IKEA bed, I think, was so lasting because you, as a young person, you want to have something new, and no, it lasted so long, too long. No, yes. It's. I agree the way you are.
But I mean, what IKEA now is actually doing is that they have set this goal that they want to be fully circular before 2030. So it's not like 2050. It's actually in 8 years' time. That's a short time period. So they're starting to pivoting at you could hire furniture instead of buying it. You could sell back your furniture and they will remake it and you could buy it again, etc. And this must be so complicated because I mean it's a global company with thousands of people and operating in so many countries. It's easy.
I actually met them in
Glasgow.
Glasgow.
It's easy to do this if you're a small company like one shop. You can have an organic coffee shop. It's no problem. But if you're a global corporation, it's really hard to do it. And I really hope they do it because what IKEA is actually have that could really matter is that it's a Swedish company. And in Sweden, we are 10 million citizens. 10 million citizens. If all people in Sweden change, it will still not really change the world. But IKEA, they have 1 billion customers.
Yeah.
So what IKEA also is doing is that they don't just are transforming their business model, they're also including their customers in this, educating them about saving water, saving, and have them to change behavior. They could do so much more here. They have started with small steps, but come on. If you have 1 billion customers, you're really in a position where you really could change something. And in order to succeed with that, you need to change yourself. Otherwise, no one will trust you. But it's not enough to change yourself if you don't also communicate so others can follow. And IKEA is in a really, really position where they can use this power. They have started, but I actually want to like to see a little bit even more action from them.
I met some of the leadership team, CEO and CSO in Glasgow, and I thought it was fascinating. They had an exhibition, and but also the engagement they do with their employees and everybody. They help to educate even their workforce, that they help to educate the clients, and also fascinating stories about their forestry. So obviously they're in the wood business as well as CO2 emissions. Or impacts on this, and very, very thoughtful and conscious about their impact and footprint. Now we come to a first audience question from Ben here, and maybe you can chime in on this. So what about the human factor? Interest-based perception, cognitive biases, and etc. Are these considered in the interactions between regulators and companies? Are the humans actually considered by regulators? Or how could chief sustainability officers communicate this within the company? So the human factor in all of this. Do you have an opinion? That's a mouthful here, Ben. Thank you for the question. If you have questions, please also type them in or go to Menti and add them there. Is there anything here which you might relate to, Nadine, when you have contacts with regulators? Do they think about numbers, or is there also a human factor somehow involved? Do they think about their kids?
As we are just focusing on climate and on carbon, in this area, the human factor is not that much considered. I'd say, if there's anything human considered in that area, it's more about like using climate actions in companies to have a better image towards the employees or towards possible employees. So in the HR department, it's a critical thing, because we know it's getting more and more important for especially the younger people, younger talents to do something about climate. And I would say there the human factor comes in and is growingly important as well. From a regulator perspective, in that area, I don't see it, but definitely in the other areas they are. But this is not where I'm in so much.
Ingmar, the human factor, do you have an opinion? I would even argue,
it comes back again to the transparency topic. Now, of course, to really know what is happening and who's responsible for certain kind of emissions within one company. And to create this accountability and to see, okay, this department is responsible for 80% of the emissions. Okay, so maybe that is really my main topic for the next 2-3 years that I haven't considered before. I would say in this area that comes in as well.
I will say how I interpret the question is the human factor is to get people to understand what's happening and why they should care and motivate what you're doing as a company. It's crucial. The climate crisis is not a scientific crisis. We don't need to know more about how bad it's going to be if we don't act. It's actually knowledge that we don't need. It's great maybe for a few to do it as a special research, but really don't need more climate scientists. Sorry if you're a climate scientist, super important job, but that will not solve the climate crisis. What will solve the climate crisis is that we need people in communication. We need behavioral scientists, and we need to understand why people are so passive. I think everyone that are working on action, if you're a company or if you're activist, you should always focus to activate people. If you don't succeed in activating people, you don't doing any impact, or you're not doing enough impact. It doesn't matter. And this is really frustrating because when I started with We Don't Have Time, I thought it was about if people just realize the situation we're in, if people really understand it, like I was starting doing, people will act. But here we are. Many people knows about the climate crisis. Many people know that it's really bad. They maybe don't know that it's super bad, but they know that it's very bad. But they still don't act. They talk about it.
Can I be provocative? I think that we should also, I mean, we are humans in the corporate environment or in the job, and you might be in a job where you have 10 people around you because you're a startup, or you have 10,000 people around you. But some people, let's say, from my experience at least, think that when they're in the corporate world, somebody else is in charge and they do what they do on their desk. And I think we all have to be climate activists where we are at the moment, and say, well, you could say no to some kind of things you asked to do, or maybe give attention of maybe more climate positive, or it's not a big policy. It's actually what can you do within 5 minutes where you take 10 minutes more attention on this paper, or half an hour more on that paper, or who do you meet for lunch? Can you meet with somebody in R&D? Can you meet with somebody in marketing? And say, hey, I think we should, do something, and we can all be with small groups of 2 or 3 people. All of a sudden, around that lunch table, you can start your mini revolution, if you will. But no, call it activism, call it just switching in your brain, because we are all humans. We all have to act. We are acting all the time. We just have, not just, but we should maybe increase our lens and see, well, can I be the one who asks tough questions? Can I be the one who have maybe worked on some ideas and solutions? And most people, especially in corporate, say, oh, wow, if we solve this whole thing, it's $1 million and we need, I never get $1 million.
Yeah.
Well, but I think there's something you can do with, let's say, 20 minutes of your lunchtime talking to this other person. And then all of a sudden you're 2, and now you have maybe somebody.
Right, Harald. But the truth is, very few people do it.
Yeah,
because people, we are followers. We're not, just few people are actually leaders. And if you think of it, if all people on this planet will become leaders, it will be chaos. So, the civilization works because most people follow the leaders. And some people are former leaders, some people become leaders. And we need more leaders. We need exactly what you're telling about. But they could really create change. I've seen many companies that are in the forefront in the climate, and it's often not from the CEO it has started. It's just started from someone middle managed or on the ground, actually. So we need that, but we should. I have realized that most people will not do that journey you described, because most people are not born to be leaders. Everyone can be leaders if they want to, but people just don't do it, and they will not do it in the future either, I think. But what we need, and this is something that is missing in the business community. I see so much action in the business community. I see so many that are stepping up the action. They are trying to transform their businesses. There are even business leaders that are speaking out, demanding change from the governments, exactly like corporate activism is going to be so much more common in the future, and it has already started. But I miss something. Yeah. I miss those leaders in top of big organizations that also try to do it in their personal life. It's so many. I can name so many great companies that have CEOs and high-level business leaders that are speaking out. that we need this, we need to transform, we need to go fossil free. I mean, one that has a really loud voice in the space is Larry Flink, the CEO of BlackRock. Every year he's writing this letter, and he's really feeling like, I'm doing something for the climate, I'm doing something for my child. It's not bullshit. He's really believed that. And he's also, I mean, he's influencing the global debate, so he does something. It's just not enough. But what about if Larry Flink also stopped flying, or at least stop the private jets? What about if he started to have a plant-based food diet, or at least eat more vegetarian? What about if he put solar panels on all his estates? What about if he's trying to reduce his own impact? That will create so much change, because we need to see those leaders that we need to look up to, and they really don't exist in the political space, and they don't really exist in the business space either. But we should, what I think here, it should not be that you must do change in your private life. You should be absolutely welcome to work on change without doing changes yourself. But if you do the personal change, wow, that could really create ripple effects. So my prediction is actually, I think the world needs, and it's probably going to happen, the next Greta Thunberg will be a business leader that also change his own or her own personal life and try.
Interesting. We have in Germany the new foreign minister Annalena Baerbock. I think communicated that normally at this level you have your own private government jet, more or less, especially if you're a foreign minister, so that she will fly more with her entourage in normal jets at least. So either a crew of 50 people goes into one little plane, or it's part of something which is already fine. So it's a small step.
Important. It's very important that people don't see that they need to go from being very, very bad to be perfect example. We don't need perfect examples. Perfect examples scares people away. We need imperfect examples, but we need leaders trying. And they don't. If you take the private jet wherever you go, like Leonardo DiCaprio.
That was also something that I saw in Davos.
I accept him to take a private jet once in a while, but not. I mean, he could reduce that. Everyone.
Go ahead, Nadine.
This was also something that I find so very funny in Davos when I was there. You had the SDGs on every shopping window from all these large companies, in this pop-up stores there during this Davos week. But you had all these private jets coming in and out all the time, and so everybody was talking about sustainability, eating meat, flying jet, etc. And so, I also think like the climate crisis can't be solved on an individual level. So that's not possible. But I also see the point, like, to really show that you are also willing to change something yourself. That I would say would make like also a cultural impact on that topic that is it's blocking us at the moment as well, because it's seen like nobody wants to do the first step, really. Like everybody's talking about it. If you can really say, okay, I do something, it's actually not that bad. That could really help because I always think we need to look at the topic also more positively, in the way of what are the chances, where should we go to, and it's not that bad to change our behavior. So and at the moment it's just like, oh god, we have all these costs and we can't do something, and so this is, I think, the energy that is in the topic at the moment. To push it forward.
Lot of small first steps, that's what we need, and then encourage others and hang together as a community to grow.
And this is also what I think it's something where also industries have maybe to work together. So if every company is trying to solve something on the individual level, in terms of let's say new business development, definitely that's a thing. But if it's about creating new methods to, I don't know, reduce the energy emissions or whatever, then that can be very difficult for certain industries. And so why don't we work together? So I really see also a big role of the associations, to step in and to see how we can kind of put the forces together and help to drive innovation in these fields. And look at innovation, look at chances, and yeah, get a positive energy and movement into that as well.
Very good. So here's a question, and we have a couple of minutes left. If there's one other burning question right after this, please share it, and then we try to close on time. So Michael says something like, how does any of this help in building resilience in the most vulnerable and impoverished community? Does anyone consider this, or do we only focus on policy, regulations, big corporates, etc.? These are great efforts in reducing emissions, but if our targets are not met, what happens to those who are most affected by this? Basically, we're talking about adaptation, right? So I find it interesting that you have within the UN Climate Secretariat, you have this mitigation, fighting climate change, and then you have adaptation, and there's more basically efforts and monies already in adaptation, because the general consensus as well, we have to save the islands, and yeah, where mostly the effect is coming down in poor regions, unfortunately, or developing regions, which actually so far didn't even contribute so much to climate change and to the results. Is there anything where you see that resilience is impoverished? Actually, I would love to point you out to the Resilience Frontiers, which is an initiative from the UN Climate Secretariat, and we're having a small step in helping to, let's say, bring knowledge together. And one of the things there is actually that a lot of these policies, for example, or new ideas, are not only considering technology, but also, for example, indigenous wisdom. So can we already see some of the local knowledge and apply it to policy, and not even say, okay, everything from policy goes up, from top down to these regions or populations. Do you have an example where you see maybe where resilience plays a role, or where connecting with these regions is already happening or encouraged? Ingmar, are your corporations, or you'd say the activism, mostly in the Western world, or is there?
I think it's a good question. I mean, we will need to stop the mission, otherwise we can't adapt, either if we are rich or poor country. It doesn't just work out, we will go down. But what we are doing, and we don't have time, is that we're not talking about the poor countries as someone that we need to help. We're actually empower them. I think the best way we can help them is actually to give them a global voice, so that people could hear about those stories, because the stories they are telling is the stories that will happen to us in a near future. And people don't know about this. I mean, just now in Brasilia, 100 people died because of climate change this week. You just read small fraction of it on media. Get a camera crew there and get those people to tell the story. And we have, for example, last year we have opened an office in Nairobi. We want to empower 1 billion African people to become climate advocates, talking about what's needed to be done, and we need to include them in the global debate. We are all in this together.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think there's, as you say, there's value in convening, there's value in stories, narratives, and even, if we make it right and start at least cutting some of the emissions around these, that's very important. But I think that this is something, where, live events, gatherings, convenings can help, and we don't have to go there every week, but if there's a once or twice a year, because this is how I think action starts, with negotiating, with convening, with finding like-minded people, maybe even opposite. You can cross-pollinate and learn from each other. And obviously that's some of our mission, that to bring chief sustainability officers together and start that they share their experiences, they can learn from each other, and hopefully that multiplies. So this is a kind of a hint. We have 10 of the, we're opening up, it's invite only community meeting, but there's some tickets available online, and obviously looking for partnerships. if you like to reach out, because I think it's important to have these gatherings and have these conversations like we are here, and some of it can be done over Zoom. We all will be better in these technology worlds, but it is the human factor, which one of the question was, and sometimes human factor is also learning from each other. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your view, you're starting to tackle, and we all start from different corners, and I really applaud you for every one of you kind of basically climbing the ladder, literally, Nadine, and overlooking the global economy in your activism, and thank you for taking the first picture of Greta. And you told me also that 1 or 2 years before, so when she was 14 or so, she already had a big article or open ed piece in the newspaper, right?
She wrote an essay in one of the biggest newspaper and won this nomination. And it was, Greta is doing great climate action, but she's a super talent in language and writing and communication. I never met anyone even near. And now she's 18 years old. And what I hope Greta is going to do in her life is become that political leader that the world needs. Because now it's not about criticizing those that are doing it. Now it's becoming the leader.
Exactly.
In the future. And I hope that the climate youth movement, now when they are starting to become grown-ups, is going to put away the leaders standing in the way. And the change needs to help that happen. And everyone needs to just get rid of the old business as usual mentality and go into new. And there's one last thing regarding this. If you're a leader doing changes in your private life, it's not about that you need to be an example. It's about also that you learn from it. When I took the train to Glasgow from Stockholm, I learned so much about what we need to fix in order to make a society work when we go fossil free. And this lesson, I have like 100 business ideas on how you can make train journeys so much better, etc.
Okay, we talk about this in our
learnings or insights. So business leader, next time they go to Davos, try to go there like ordinary people and try to go there as fossil free as possible, and you will learn so much, and you also meet people, and you will develop yourself, and you will actually build a culture. Everything is about how you change the culture in your organization, and leaders can really do much here. They should not do it because they must, they should do it because they can.
Very wise closing words. Thank you so much, Nadine. Thank you so much, Ingmar. Thank you, Mila and the team. We will kind of have a last closing question while you maybe are still on your first coffee, if you like. So we're obviously always looking for co-creation and ideas in our plan for the next wake-up call. So let us know in the comments here in the Menti board. So what topics do you like to see us covered? And we're looking forward to see if we can bring amazing speakers like these two to your screens as well. Have a fantastic day wherever you are, and do what you do. Start your first step, and if you already are working on it, start communicating, talking, and measuring, and then manage and reduce our own climate effect. Our kids and future generations will definitely thank us for this. I thank the panelists again. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic day, and let's close this wake-up call, and see you soon again.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you so much.